a little bit in common with each and every one of you. That may scare you, but part of the human condition.
Are you going to tell them the part about supervision?
Okay, live. Here we go. Maybe when we go off the air, I'll tell them, Jerry. Well, good morning. Thanks for coming. I'll pray for Sunday school and for us and for camp for Pastor and Chris. God, we love you. Incredibly grateful for each and every day, for our lives, for each breath that we take for granted because it's an autonomic response and we just don't think about it. Keep us ever mindful of your Son, Jesus Christ, and that sacrifice he made for us. Thanks for Jim and Chris and all the workers and all the staff going to the camp. I pray it goes off without a hitch. I pray that many will get saved and will change their future and the lives of their family and friends and maybe their kids one day. Thanks for Sunday school and the opportunity to teach. I pray that your message would come through my words. In Jesus' name, amen. 2 Samuel chapter 15. Carrying on. We're going to go 15 through 20. I'm going to try to grab all the content without reading all of it to you. But as always, if anyone has a word, please jump in. Just let me know. Yeah, 2 Samuel chapter 15. I can always find it because it's next to all the two books. 1st, 2nd Samuel, 1st, 2nd Kings, 1st, 2nd Chronicles. So as long as you find one of the two books, you got it. It's right in the middle, or right in the beginning, actually. So the title in my book is Absalom's Rebellion. And Absalom is David's kiddo. And he's an interesting character. He's a beautiful man, beautiful hair, phenomenal personality. Quite self-centered because of all that beauty, I guess. I'm not exactly sure, or the lack of fathering by David. I'm going to read a little bit. After this, Absalom bought a chariot and horses, and he hired 50 bodyguards to run ahead of him. He got up early every morning and went out to the gate of the city. When people brought a case to the king for judgment, Absalom would ask, "Where in Israel are you from?" And they would tell him their tribe. Then Absalom would say, "You've really got a strong case here. It's too bad the king doesn't have anyone to hear it. I wish I were the judge. Then everyone could bring their cases to me for judgment, and I would give them justice." What is that, especially the last part, what does that say to you? I mean, what are you hearing in the way that's being told?
15.
Used car salesman? Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Where are you from? Showing interest in the human, in their tribes. Opportunist. You really got a strong case here. Flattery. Maybe, snake oil salesman type gig. And the passive-aggressive attack. It's too bad the king doesn't have anyone to hear it. He's not coming out and insulting David, but he's taking jabs at him for sure. I would give them justice. When the people tried to bow before him, Absalom wouldn't let them. Verse 5, instead he took them by the hand and kissed them. Absalom did this with everyone who came to the king for judgment, and so he stole the hearts of all the people of Israel. Politician? Yeah. Silver-tongued devil, right?
Well, like what? Election year, well, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead of you a little bit. In 4 years.
No, we're sort of in the thick of politics right now, are we not? And God, I'm amending to my prayer, please take care of our country. Amen. May your will be done. Verse 7, Absalom asked David to go to Hebron to sacrifice to the Lord and fulfill a vow I made to him. He promised to do something and bring me back. He's lying through his teeth. It's just, he's a liar. He sent, this is verse 10, he sent secret messages to all the tribes of Israel to stir up rebellion against the king. That was his true meaning for being there. He crowned himself king. Took 200 men as guests, but they didn't know anything about it. And so your son crowns himself king in another part of Israel, and you're the king. That's not good. How would you, what would you do if you were David? I mean, how would you handle that? Anyone?
I would allow politicianing too.
Oh, yeah?
Well, I mean, you know,
Sure. Beat him at his own game?
I would wonder if it was my time to step down and let my son step up.
Mm-hmm.
I'd get the army and go take them out.
Okay. Hey, these are all good responses, you know?
Or let him bury himself.
Mhm.
Right. Because you could see David going, okay, Absalom, you know.
Yeah, but David's heart was so tender, and he loved his kids, and he felt horrible about raising them wrong, and what he did with Uriah and Bathsheba, and all that is just gone. It's in his psyche. Man after God's own heart. I'm going to say that about 10 times today, because David's heart is just huge through this whole thing. And be looking for the way David treats people in these next 5 chapters and the foreshadowing of Christ's kingdom to come. Undeserved merit and mercy. And David, my wife's giving me the look. She doesn't see it, but I think it's there.
But then later in that situation, you know, whether it's in our work or the military or whatever, you pull a person like that aside and try to straighten them out.
Hmm. But he was deceived, and he was way off. He went away to do it, so he couldn't get a hold of him, right? So yeah, he could go after him and do it for sure, or an army, or politicking and beat him at his own game, or you know.
But being his father, I'm sure he was torn, like you said, and felt, you know, I didn't do what I should have done when I was raising him.
Right, but he didn't own it either. Had he owned it, the consequences and owned the areas he was not great at with his kids, he wouldn't have been in this situation. And
Well, mistakes way earlier in life,
walking
because
around
he
with
was
guilt and
supposedly
resentment doesn't
40.
fix anything.
He was supposedly about 40 years old, so he was a grown man at that point, you know. So, yeah, no, you got to take responsibility, and it's tough to look back on your 40-year-old kids and see your fingerprints all over their mistakes. You know, the way that they just don't function. You know, Ivy said it last night. I'm sorry, Park. Yeah, that one's on me. Or not last night, last week in Sunday school. Yeah. John.
He may well have been either just too relaxed in it, too busy or whatever. He wasn't keeping house.
Right.
I'm reminded of a phrase I heard years ago about the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. He obviously wasn't on top of the issue.
Yeah,
It
for
could
sure.
have been guilt, it could have been any number of things.
Mm-hmm.
But he wasn't seeing it for what it was.
Yeah, I think, you know, in parenting and in ruling, because he wasn't the warrior that he was earlier either. He got lax, which is why you have people step up. Oh, he's lax, he's not doing that. Oh, yeah, there's a power vacuum, right? Somebody can step in and see that it's a possibility. When he's out killing people, nobody wants to step up against that because, you know, he was God's man. And So, yeah, he got lax in probably a lot of areas. Yeah, I agree. So, verse 13 of chapter 15, Absalom's in conspiracy against you. You must flee or it'll be too late. And so he grabbed his men and left. And interestingly enough, he took the Ark of the Covenant with him. But in verse 25, he instructed Zadok to take the Ark back to the city. If the Lord sees fit, David said, he will bring me back to see the Ark in the tabernacle again. But if he is through with me, then let him do what seems best to him. So he was prayerfully considering God's will and accepting the consequences. You said, earlier, he's like, oh, if it's God's will for me to come back, I'll come back. Otherwise, just send it back to Israel where it belongs. And I like to see that, because this can't be pleasant for him as a father or as a king of a country. He feels overwhelmingly burdened in both responsibility areas.
And what about Absalom? I mean, his sister was raped.
Right. And David did nothing
David
about it. And
did
if I was
nothing
Absalom,
about
I'd be
it.
ticked off too, 100%.
So culture back then, they just didn't,
To rape your sister?
no, but, right,
To not do anything about it. I don't know. But he was mad about his sister being raped, and David just didn't do as much as he should have, or anything for that matter. Being the laissez-faire parent.
that they said, oh, don't come and get this guy, I'll give you my daughter, who's a virgin, rape her.
Right.
That was the culture.
Just weird. Very, very different than ours.
Tamar begged him not to.
Right.
I mean, she begged him, Amon, to not do that.
So not only in David's power, in his absence of ruling his family and his kingdom, his son was angry at him and stepped in, tried to take the kingdom from him. And Nathan predicted this chapters ago. When he confronted him, you are that man. He said, this is what's going to happen. And David, obviously, that's burning a hole in his head. It's got to be. It would be me. Oh, he told me this was going to happen. I love that guy. I miss him. Verse 31, I love. When somebody told David that his advisor, Ahithophel, I don't know, you know how to, huh? Ahithophel, thank you, was now backing Absalom, David prayed, O Lord, let Ahithophel give Absalom foolish advice. He was human. But he was still praying.
Counsel him into foolishness.
Yes, counsel, yeah, exactly. And maybe in his mind, he's thinking, if that happens, maybe my son won't have to die. Because we're in a fierce time. You didn't spare your enemies. You stuck them on spears or cut their heads off. It was incredibly bloody and violent, right? And I think he was thinking about his kid, so that was like mercy, seems like to me. And David was mourning, prayerfully mourning what was going on, the end of chapter 15. Chapter 16, let's see if I had any notes on that.
One of the things I noticed is David was, when he was going up Mount Olive, he was, like you said, very, very thankful. But many of the people that were with him, it was all the people, I'm sorry, that were with him covered up, and they were weeping with him.
He definitely had a loyal band of folks around him.
That's right.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt. Super loyal in the face of the power having swung the way of his son. And all the commentaries you read on this, the crowds are incredibly fickle. They can be swayed. Look at what went on in college campuses a month ago, So, just super interesting. Crowds. There's a quote, I can't remember it exactly. People are rational. Crowds are, sort of the exact opposite. That's not as elegant as the quote, but it gets the point across. Part of the story, he left 10 of his concubines there to take care of his house, which plays an interesting part later on. And I see his actions, mourning ashes on his, dirt on his head, tearing his clothing, as submission to God. And praying probably for his son's life and for his son's safety. That's what I'm guessing. Any other thoughts or opinions, please let me know. But and let's see. He was worshiping in probably one of the hardest times of his life, not just in the good times. He did what he did. He went to the Mount of Olives and he worshiped in the bad times. Even though he messed up, he was a human. He was a man after God's own heart because of the way he handled it, because he looked to God in the bad times as well as the good. And he wrote a lot of psalms about this time in his life, too. There's tons of them. Laments. I have notes and stuff, but... all right, chapter 16. Mephibosheth, I'm skipping around, so you'll have to forgive me, I'm still in verse 1, was waiting there for him. He had 2 donkeys loaded with 200 loaves of bread, 100 clusters of raisins, and a lot of fruit, and a wineskin full of wine. What are these for? The king asked Ziba. Ziba replied, these donkeys are for the king's people to ride on. And where is Mephibosheth? This is verse 3, Saul's grandson. Stayed in Jerusalem. He said, today I will get back the kingdom of my grandfather Saul. And so David gave Ziba everything Mephibosheth owns. And Mephibosheth was crippled, and he was Saul's grandson, and David showed great kindness to him before. I mean, I don't know why a crippled guy would say something like that about, anyway.
It says David was too quick to believe she was
Yep.
the story,
Right.
which turned out to be untrue.
A little gullible there.
His snap judgment had lasting consequences for that name,
Mephibosheth, yeah. Yeah, both live there. Yeah. No, he lacked some discernment there, no doubt about it. He just believed the guy right offhand, and he was being lied to. So it happens to all of us. I mean, no question, at some point. People you think you can trust. Maybe he should have stopped and prayed for discernment there. And I don't know. It's not a bad practice. This is a great, great part. Verse 5, as King David came to Bahurim, a man came out of the village cursing them. It was Shimei, son of Gera, from the same clan as Saul's family. He threw stones at the king and the king's officers and all the mighty warriors who surrounded him. Get out of here, you murderer, you scoundrel, he shouted at David. The Lord is paying you back for all the bloodshed in Saul's clan. You stole his throne, and now the Lord has given it to your son Absalom. At last you will taste some of your own medicine, for you are a murderer. How would you respond if somebody was throwing stuff at you and saying, you're a murderer, get out of here? I mean, God gave David Saul's kingdom. David had 2 or 3 chances to kill Saul and didn't do it. Cut the robe off and said, I could have killed you, and I didn't. How do we respond in a situation where somebody's in your face, maybe hurling insults or hurling whatever? How do you respond? Personally, give me some personal testimony. How have you responded?
Lack of time.
Like, that's you? You responding? Perfect, thank you.
Are we still live?
Yep, I'm hurling insults right back. We're all guilty of that. Just saying.
A soft answer turns away wrath.
It does. It absolutely does. It's a great quote. Perfect. You're gonna say something, John?
Abisha, I'm not pronouncing his name right, Abisha, made the comment, why should a dead dog be allowed to curse?
Yeah, the next verse. Yep. Uh-huh. Right. What were we?
What Shimei was saying was lies. There was
Mhm.
no truth at all.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, David had attempted,
Slanderous.
for Jonathan's sake, to restore. That's why Mephibosheth got what he got anyway, to sit at the king's table, because David wasn't part of the murder of Saul. In fact, he was trying to extend
Right.
the influence of Saul. So that was 100% off.
And he knew it, even though it didn't feel good. Right.
And how you handle that, maybe his own guilt, came into play there in other areas. But it was a total fabrication.
Mm-hmm. And he had men with him who were armed, and let me read the next verse. Why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Abishai, son of Zeruiah, demanded. Let me go over and cut off his head. No, the king said. Who asked your opinion, you sons of Zeruiah? If the Lord has told him to curse me, who are you to stop him? The meek shall inherit the earth. That is the textbook definition of being meek. Could have cut off his head, didn't do it. With a sword or with words. He could have shut him down. He could have ruined his life. He could have killed him, and he didn't. He had the power to do it, and he chose not to. If we could all act so generously in a situation like that. Another thing is, if the Lord had told him to curse me, who are you to stop him? Why would he say that? Paul. It's an interesting question. Why would he say, if the Lord has told him to curse me, why would you stop him? Who are you to stop him?
You think he believes it?
I don't know. It's interesting.
Maybe it wasn't his style.
Well,
Through this whole thing, you've got to remember the person who is responding or not responding, it's got to be their style. In other words, if they're one to pump up their breast,
Mhm.
that's one thing. But if they're more of a meek person, you can't make them become unmeek.
Mm-hmm.
Am I saying that right? Someone gets right.
Mm-hmm.
Reduce the meekness.
Yeah, no, it's interesting.
He just trusted that God was gonna be in charge of everything. And if he deserved the wrath of God, he wanted all of it. Probably felt like he deserved it. It's like such a typical Jewish guilt.
Typical
he's
Jewish guilt.
making the point that David is saying, if the Lord, he's doing what the Lord told him to do. But if I trust, and I'm phrasing this a little different than it is, but if I trust God in my distress, I will be repaid with good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is, once again, a man after God's own heart. David, in the face of his adversary, telling lies that he knows in his heart are lies, is still looking to make himself a better man because God could be speaking through this fool in his face, throwing rocks, acting a fool. And I could kill him, and I could ruin his life with 2 words, and I'm still going to consider if there's something valuable there. That's a big man.
Sorry.
Don't let it happen again.
You're a lot nicer to her than you are to me when I forget to turn mine on.
I have no power.
Well, and, as we've all learned through hardships and through difficult times in our lives is when God appears a lot clearer. I say I'm very blessed by having had cancer. However, I wish everything I had learned through cancer, I learned by eating a bowl of ice cream. You know, but it doesn't,
Eating ice cream now.
yeah, oh, can't you tell? I've tried that.
Oh.
But it doesn't work that way. And I think David has been through it so many times that he understands, been here, I'm about to grow, God's gonna probably teach me some humility, whatever it is, and I think he welcomes it, because he knows that it's during those times.
He's got the long game at the forefront of his
Yeah.
mind, for sure. For sure. He's got everything you said in, you know, the humility and the meekness, and he's not had it easy consequence-wise for the last since Bathsheba and Uriah. And those are some pretty bad mistakes to make. And he obviously confessed and is accepting the consequences, but still he's got them. And even in the midst of the consequences of his actions that God is meting out to him, he's still looking to better himself through the whole thing, which just makes him awesome, you know, and somebody to look to and try to emulate when we want to come back in kind. Just, that's the way we respond, quick. That's just, you know, and you have to say, keep the long game, keep the long, you know.
I think in exactly what you're saying, David had gained a larger perspective than he used to have. He was very reactionary early in life.
Could be, for
And he
sure.
took it personally, and he handled it personally. But he had seen God work in larger circumstances, and I think he was at a point in his life where he could take the rough spots and rocks and everything else, if it was God's will that he take them to grow them.
Yeah,
And
and,
I think that's perspective.
yep, and you're exactly right. And the thing, he was reactionary, and it made him a really good warrior, and it made him good in battle, making snap decisions, responding emotionally to his gut and his instinct. And it also was his Achilles tendon when he saw that beautiful woman bathing on the roof. So the same thing that made him awesome also cut him
Our
Mm-hmm.
down.
biggest strengths are often
Yeah.
our greatest weakness.
It's just so, yeah. And Absalom got caught up in his strengths and used them and felt that they were his, and didn't have the character to temper, and he got way full of himself, and it ended up getting him in big trouble. But you have to, everything you have that's good, if you're smart, if you got pretty eyes, if you got great hair like me, then me and Ivy, we got great hair, yeah. God gave it to you. Everything you have in life, even if it's mediocre or less than, God gave it to you, and it's a gift, and it needs to be treated as such, or you'll get out of hand and get yourself in trouble.
I think David realized over time, through all his experiences, God does not make mistakes.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, he was way more mature than he was just a few chapters ago, but a lot of time has transpired, you know, so. The white lines in between the print have a lot of years there, so. Yeah, this is one of my favorite passages where we're going to learn, because it just is such a display of character. It's unbelievable. Verse 11, chapter 16. Then David said to Abishai and all his servants, "My own son is trying to kill me. Doesn't this relative of Saul have even more reason to do it so? Leave him alone and let him curse, for the Lord has told him to do it. And perhaps the Lord will see that I'm being wronged and will bless me because of these curses today," like she said. So David and his men continued down the road, and Shimei kept pace with them on a nearby hillside, cursing and throwing stones and dirt at David. And they rested. Absalom, verse 20, Absalom turned to Ahithophel and asked him, "What should I do next?" Ahithophel told him, "Go and sleep with your father's concubines, for he has left them here to look after the palace. Then all Israel will know that you have insulted your father beyond hope of reconciliation, and they will throw their support to you." So they set up the tent, and he went in and raped his father's concubines. Absalom followed Ahithophel's advice just as David had done. For every word Ahithophel spoke seemed as wise as though it had come directly from the mouth of God. How's that going to turn out? Remember, David prayed for him to give Absalom bad advice. Prayer's a powerful thing. When you get in a pinch, I think it's the thing most of us covet from our friends in church body of Christ the most. However small. Even if it's just in passing. Oh, I thought about John today. He needed a prayer. Oh, God, hook that guy up, man. You know, as you're driving down the street, as you're walking through the grocery store. You don't, I don't know. I could get way off base in the prayer, but sometimes you need to be on your knees, and sometimes you need to be going about your business in life, and just when something pops in your head, be, oh, Holy Spirit, I need to stop and pray for them for about 30 seconds, you know? Then when you see them, you can genuinely say, I prayed for you, and not lie about it. Like you forgot to pray. Oh, I see him coming. Oh, God, I remember Tim. He had a prayer request. I prayed for you, Tim. None of us do that, I'm sorry. It's just me. If I just threw myself under the bus and all y'all are better than me, I'm sorry. Don't hold it against me.
Also when we're driving.
Absolutely.
Especially.
Absolutely. Sometimes for me, everyone's a little different. I like noise in the background. I like music. I like talk radio. Whatever the Facebook and the Insta, whatever we do. It is super refreshing to turn it all off and just sit sometimes. And Christian music's good too. It has its place, but silence is golden, right? Duct tape is silver. Sorry.
Speaking of which, if you don't mind, I'm
Please.
driving by myself all the way up to Panama City next week. I know, remember.
Traveling mercies for you.
Foxy, you want to take a ride to Panama City?
Yeah. So yeah, some music, some talk radio to get not too much politics, just enough to wet your whistle, and then some silence. That would be my perfect idea of a drive to Panama City. You know.
I like to drive.
Yeah. It can be peaceful, and you can have great time with God. I think you ride shotgun or captain, co-cap, however you want to say it. Chapter 17. The foolish advice. Ahithophel urged Absalom, let me choose 12,000 men to start out after David tonight. I will catch up with him while he's weary and discouraged. His troops will panic and everyone will run away. Then I will kill only the king and bring all the people back to you as a bride returns to her husband. After all, it is only one man's life that you seek. Then you will be at peace with all your people. This plan seemed good to Absalom and all the other elders of Israel. But then Absalom said, bring in Hushai the Archite. Let's see what he thinks about this. When Hushai arrived, Absalom told him what Ahithophel had said. Then he said, what is your opinion? Should we follow Ahithophel's advice? If not, what do you suggest? 7. Well, Hushai replied to Absalom, this time Ahithophel has made a mistake. You know your father and his men. They are mighty warriors. Right now they are as enraged as a mother bear who has been robbed of her cubs. And remember that your father is an experienced man of war. He won't be spending the night among the troops. He's probably already hidden in some pit or cave. And when he comes out and attacks, and a few men of your men fall, there will be panic among your troops, and the word will spread that Absalom's men are being slaughtered. Then even the bravest soldiers, though they have the heart of a lion, will be paralyzed with fear, for all Israel knows what a mighty warrior your father is and how courageous his men are. I recommend that you mobilize the entire army of Israel, bringing them from as far away as Dan in the north and Beersheba in the south. That way you will have an army as numerous as the sand on the seashore, and I advise you personally lead the troops. When we find David, we'll fall on him like dew that falls on the ground. Then neither he nor any of his men will be left alive. And if he escapes to a town, you can still get him.
He used Avalon's ego and paranoia to convince him to go against, I can't pronounce it, but that person's advice.
Right. No. I agree. Yeah, he ticked into his ego. He knew he had a big ego. You know, if you think about somebody that when they walk in the room, whether you know them or you don't know them, they have a swagger about them and they just are full of themselves. You can see it. It doesn't take a mind reader to know somebody who's super full of themselves. You can hear 2 or 3 sentences and you got it, you know.
But what if this?
Hope I didn't run you all off.
What if this, I mean, to me, this seems so very God-led.
Mhm.
Like, for some reason, Absalom wanted David's spy to come in and give his advice, right? Because isn't this guy the spy who goes back and tells
Yes.
the people, so God's in this,
Mhm.
right?
David prayed for bad advice to be given. It was
Right.
bad advice. The good advice came in. He's like, oh, that's what we need to do. But God's in it because it's
But it
really
was-
bad advice.
But the advice that he took was the advice that protected David.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was both bad. The first advice turned out to be better than the second advice, but who knows? But it ended up protecting David, and Absalom died. So we're going to get there next chapter, but yes, God's in it. God's in the details. David prayed for one thing, and God used something completely separate to protect him, because that was what was supposed to happen. And it's interesting that he uses good people and bad people in all his narratives. He just does. Just because you're evil doesn't mean you don't have a part to play in God's narrative, in his story.
And to me, it just goes to show when we pray for something, it doesn't necessarily mean that's what we need.
Right. Lord knows I've prayed for a lot of stuff I'm glad I didn't get. You know?
Because if that foolish advice was followed, that could have changed the whole Bible.
Right. Yeah.
We don't always get what we want, we get what we need.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, good point.
So,
Yeah, I
Whether good
agree.
or bad.
right.
Yes.
We pray for something, it happens, but something else happens to affect that happening, and it ends up being right. David saw the mean guy throwing rocks and insults at him that he could have cut to pieces and tried to learn from it. The evil people in our lives, people that make us crazy, people that are crazy, people that treat us poorly, whether they be a passerby or anything else, are a part of God's plan. The way I'm reading, hopefully I'm not reading too much into this, and we need to see them that way and try to learn from them while being meek and not lopping their head off and rolling it down the street, either with words or a sword. Nobody carries swords anymore, but you know what I mean.
Well, the tongue can be as bad as a sword.
Yeah. That old phrase, sticks and stones can break my bones, but words will never hurt me, is a lie.
Yeah.
So I learned that as a kid. I'd rather get beat up than,
We'd all rather be spanked than be told that.
we're
We're
foolish and stupid.
disappointed.
Yeah.
My dad was good at
Yeah.
He was an equal
it. So I'm
opportunist.
disappointed, now here comes the spanking.
Yeah.
Spare the rod, spoiling child.
And one more just so you don't do it again.
Yeah. So Hushai warned David to escape. They went and hid in a well. A woman hid them, quite successful and remarkable. And here's a cool point that my Bible makes in the notes. Verse 17 through 21. A boy spotted them, told Absalom about it. They escaped, where a man hid them down inside a well in his courtyard. A man's wife put a cloth over the top of the well and scattered grain on it to dry in the sun, so no one suspected they were there. The army came, searched, they didn't find them, so they were saved. The servant messenger girl and the couple who hid the spies are examples of wise people loyal to God and to God's anointed king, David. No matter what your position in God's kingdom, you have a key role to play. Align your loyalties with God and those loyal to him, and then wisely look for ways, big or small, that you can make a difference. Hang out with like-minded folks. Go to church, hang out with them, and try to make a difference in their life. Sometimes when you think about it, it seems simple. Sometimes it seems insurmountable. But we could all find kind words to share with somebody. You know, if they have a grimace on their face one day, and so maybe just go up and smile at them, you know. But look for it. Look for ways to encourage the folks in your life.
I think you also have to listen to what God leads you to do. You might think it'd be a great idea to help somebody you see on the side of the road or something, and it may or may not be.
He gave us a very shrewd, analytical, rational, self-preservation oriented mind. Yeah, you have to, don't go down the dark alley, you know. Not always, or do, it just depends. Yeah.
Can you read the first part of that statement that you just read again?
The notes,
Yeah.
the servant messenger girl and the couple who hid the spies are examples of wise people.
No, the statement you made about finding purpose, or what was that you just?
The last sentence, align your loyalties with God and those loyal to him, and then wisely look for ways, big or small, that you can make a difference. Is that it? Okay. Yeah, just footnotes. But it was poignant for me.
Are those notes you made or notes that are in your literature?
I came up with it, but they wrote it in the Bible.
So you read the Bible?
I did, and I read the footnotes that some really smart theologian wrote in here. Makes me sound so intelligent.
So is it easier to find purpose in the big things or the small things?
I want to do big things. But I think the most important ones are the small ones, if I had to say,
You was faithful with little, you faithful
in much.
with much.
Yeah. Yeah. Mom said to me years ago, if you're not obeying what God says to you to do in the Bible and you're asking for more, you think he's going to tell you more when you're not obeying the simple stuff you're supposed to be doing? Yeah. I don't remember when you said that, but it was years ago. It stuck with me.
I don't remember.
There's a saying that says everybody that you meet and crosses your path in life has an issue going on or a battle you know nothing about, so be kind.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great,
Sorry.
let me find.
When you realize, and they have an issue and they don't realize it.
That's something we have to learn.
Yep.
I'm jumping way far forward, but I want to, at this point, Jim, you triggered me to read Ephesians 4, 2 and 3. Part of 1 and 2 and 3. For you have been called by God to always be humble and gentle and be patient with each other, making allowance for each other's faults because of your love. And that's what he did, and that's what you said do. You got to take everybody's life into consideration, Jim, what Jim said, you know. Everybody's got a battle. Everybody's got demons. Everybody's got people in their lives that are making them crazy, and they're making people crazy in their life too, whatever it is. And it's tough to keep that long game perspective like David had here, because he didn't have it when he was younger. He's working his way into it, you know. That is, it's not the most important thing in life, but it is daggum close. Anybody agree with that? Anybody have a hard time with that besides me? Yeah. All right. 10:20. I thought I was going to blow through this and not have enough material. Chapter 18. I'm going to go to verse, let's see, 9. During the battle, Absalom happened to come upon some of David's men. He tried to escape on his mule. Why was he on a mule? But as he rode beneath the thick branches of a great tree, his hair got caught in the tree. His mule kept going and left him dangling in the air. One of David's men saw what happened and told Joab, I saw Absalom dangling from a great tree. I mean, if this isn't comedy, oh my goodness gracious. And that just happened to be God's plan from the beginning. The thing, his beauty and his beautiful hair, the thing that he was obsessed with is the thing that killed him. It got him. And he was alive, and the guys came back and killed him. He just said, oh, help me. He couldn't get himself down because of his hair. Funny. I wish I had that problem.
No, you don't.
Oh, we're down to
18:9.
There's a lot of fodder in here too. The treachery. And Joab was an impulsive guy who lived by the sword. He's a whole nother story. He was awesome. And not so awesome. He sort of didn't follow God and did his own thing. And it ended up doing him in the end. But he's an incredible study.
The men they refused, the first men refused to kill David's son. Or kill.
Because David ordered, he said, have mercy. Be merciful with my son. Right.
There's a lot going on there with Joab, because Joab was one of David's right-hand men.
Oh, yeah.
And if you look
100%.
into the scriptures, you're going to find that there's really big-time probabilities for blackmail there. You know, David did with Bathsheba and turmoil in the family, and Joab has all the motivations to cause trouble.
No question. So the political scene now is just like the one then. Our hearts have been the way they've been since Adam and Eve. You know, we vie for power and control as people, and politically it was thick and dirty and nasty and manipulative and blackmaily, and even here, you know. And David had to be shrewd to navigate. If you think about the nicest person you know, are they the shrewdest and most politically aware? And you know, I don't know. He had a special mix of awesome as a human being. No, you bring a great point. And Joab, just to follow, he didn't respect David because he had become weak and he had made some pretty bad mistakes. When somebody's about to do evil, like Joab in killing Absalom, he was challenged. I'm not going to kill him. You couldn't get me to kill him for 10 pieces of silver. He challenged his morality, but when somebody's hell-bent on doing something wrong, they're not going to stop and think about morality. Chances are good. So he just went on and did it because that's who he was. The moral of that is carefully consider your actions before you get all charged up to go do something you shouldn't be doing in the first place. The end of chapter 18, David wishes, he said, "Oh, if I had only died instead of you." He was super upset. He was crying the ivy tears, the Jewish. That's a good Jew. I should have died instead of you.
You go. Die before you get back. No, I died happy. You were having fun.
Yeah.
Did you say you wanted him dead?
There's a lot of politics and political conniving and scheming in chapter 19 as well. We just don't have time to go through it all. Verse 24 of 19. Now Mephibosheth, Saul's grandson, came down from Jerusalem to meet the king. He had not cared for his feet, trimmed his beard, or washed his clothes since the day the king left Jerusalem. "Why didn't you come with me?" Mephibosheth, the king asked him. He replied, "My lord the king, my servant Ziba deceived me. I told him, 'Saddle my donkey so I can go with the king.' For as you know, I'm crippled. Ziba had slandered me by saying that I refused to come. But I know that my lord the king is like an angel of God, so do what you think is best. All my relatives and I could expect only death from you, my lord, but instead you've honored me by allowing me to eat at your own table. What more can I ask?" "You've said enough," David said. I replied, "I've decided that you and Ziba will divide your land equally between you." So earlier he gave it to Ziba, all of Mephibosheth's stuff. So he said, "I don't know who to believe, so I'm going to cut it in half." But it was overwhelming mercy that he didn't just kill him,
David's life shows that godly character can have great significance. David's love towards Jonathan and that name,
Mephibosheth.
Methuselah, helped unify God's people under his rule.
Yeah, love, that kind of love, the undeserved, unmerited love that he showed several people in this passage is powerful stuff, no question. It's incredibly powerful. Okay, let's go back to several weeks ago when we were talking about why we're left here on earth is to share Christ with people in a way that I believe that is the most powerful way to share Christ with people, is loving them when they don't deserve it. That you can tell somebody about Jesus, but if they get defensive, their dukes go up and they're like, "Okay, we'll spar about this. I can argue just as good against it as you can for it." But when somebody does you a wrong turn and you show them mercy instead, they're going to wonder what it is. Why did he do that? Why did Jim do that? Who does that? That's when God can stick the fork in the ground and twist it. And it's us helping him that allows his tilling of they may be so resistant, but one little act like that is incredibly powerful. So thank you for bringing that up, no question. I got lost in the weeks ago, but chapter 20, we're going to skip around. I want to talk about this lady. She's awesome. Verse 22 of chapter 20. No. Joab's at the town, and he's ready to break the doors down. Joab replied, "Believe me, I don't want to devour or destroy your town." That's verse 20. "That's not my purpose. All I want is a man named Sheba, son of Bichri, from the hill country of Ephraim, who has revolted against King David. If you hand over this man to me, I will leave the town in peace." "All right," the woman said. "We'll throw his head over the wall to you." Because that's a normal thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Then the woman went to all the people with her wise advice, and they cut off Sheba's head and threw it out to Joab. So he blew the ram's horn and called the troops back from the attack. They all returned to their homes, and Joab returned to the king at Jerusalem. The town was saved because some woman responded intelligently to a problem, fixed it, saved the whole town. He'd have wiped that town off the map. Ropes, we're going to drag every piece of rubble from this town all over the countryside until we find that fool. And she's like, "Hey, you going to tear the town up?"
So in my commentary here.
Mm-hmm.
It says the words of the woman give wisdom to these situations. Refuse to allow one person's actions to sabotage the mission of your church or team. Deal with people like this by removing them from their positions of influence if possible. If you do, many, many other problems will solve themselves.
Nice. Jim, we want your head thrown over the wall.
No, I mean, I have
Just kidding.
worked.
Yeah,
Tongue-
he's gone. Now
Sorry,
you're back.
sorry about that.
Now you're brave. No, in my employment days, somebody would do something wrong, and there would be a rule that would come out that would affect everybody, because they didn't want to deal with that one person.
So make a wide swath of a rule. Yeah, yeah, no kidding.
You know, I mean, breaking rules and
There's branches of the government with
starting
3 letters
fires
that do
in
that too.
fields and
Lots of
stuff.
them. Just one little quote by a man named Trapp, an analogy of Sheba, okay? Every man's heart is a city enclosed. Every sin is a traitor in those walls. God called for Sheba's head. He has no quarrel with the person, just the sin. If we love the head of our traitor above the life of our heart and soul, we shall justly perish. When I read that, I said, "Ooh, that's awesome."
That it's a human nature to take your anger about somebody's sin out on the person rather than the sin and talking to the sinner and stuff. And rather than do that, we'll cut a line and
We'll wipe out the whole city to get,
wipe out your whole family because you said something I didn't think was right or didn't approve of or whatever. And that's, you know, and I'm a great one because I can say something that I think is funny as it's coming out of my mouth, and then I realize, oh, God, that wasn't funny at all. But, you know, and,
No, Park can relate.
oh, we've been back and forth, believe me. But, you know, and through this whole thing, I've thought of 2 great generals that were unbelievable generals. One was George Patton. He was an unbelievable general until he got to where he believed his own press. And he went after soldiers. He you know, he was in northern France. He lost thousands of military people because they were just numbers. And his whole army turned against him. And the other one was Bobby Knight. You know, all the bad things that were said about Bobby Knight, the people don't realize all the great things he did with, you know, sick children and all that stuff. And, you know, that's where you got to sort of read the next page of the book, if you will, or whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
when the war was over, Patton got killed in an auto wreck that they say it may not have been an accident. Because he was so hated by his own men.
yeah, I love your summary, Paul. It's not the human, it's the sin. And in order to help the human with the sin, God doesn't have a problem with the human, it's the sin. But you have to go after the head of that sin and get rid of it. You got to kick it, you got to throw it out of the city. Otherwise, you'll be justly, you shall justly perish as a city. So, great analogy. And it goes back to Ephesians. You know, making allowance for each other's faults because of your love. That is what we are called by God to do. And when you speak of a calling, it is a privilege, not something you're told to do. It is a privilege to saddle up alongside God and use the way He created you, specifically, quirks and all, to get in, to weave your way into other people's lives and share the love that you have for Christ and the love He's shown you. So, awesome. Thanks, guys.
You next
Appreciate
week?
you. I'm not. I will be here the month of July, though. Claude's out, so.
No, you
Huh?
are. You are next week.
Oh, I am?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm Father's
I'm
Day.
glad you
Yeah,
said
I'm here next week, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My wife is my schedule maker, so.
My friend told me when I was first diagnosed with cancer, he said, I knew you were gonna be fine, because God would not leave that guy unsupervised.
True,
That brings
true.
up supervision, supervision.
Thank you, Clark. Thanks, Clark.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate y'all.
Good stuff.
Hey, are you good in treatment?
I'm done with,